in a land of empires, among kings, kingdoms, and the roar of war, there lived a man of unshakable faith, a man who would not bow, a man who chose prayer over fear, even when the cost was death. This is not just a story about lions. This is a story of boldness, of faith that refused to flinch, of a God who answers in the darkest pit. This is Daniel in the lion's den, a night with the king of beasts. Before there was a den, before the lions, there was a boy taken from his home. Jerusalem had fallen. The Babylonian army came with fire and sword. And among the captives was a young man named Daniel, torn from his people, dragged across deserts. But even in captivity, he never let go of his God. He was trained in the courts of Babylon, taught the language of sorcerers, given food from the king's own table. But Daniel, he would not be defiled. He said no. No to compromise. No to contamination. Because he had a purpose greater than survival. He had a call. Daniel was tested again and again. He faced jealous officials, political schemes, and impossible tasks. Yet every time, he rose. Because the Spirit of God was with him. He interpreted dreams no man could. He saved lives with wisdom from heaven. He became a trusted voice in the empire. But even when he gained favor, he never bowed to Babylon. He prayed 3 times a day, morning, noon, evening, facing Jerusalem, longing for home, longing for the God who had never abandoned him. He served kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and now Darius. But his loyalty was always to the King of Heaven. Not everyone admired Daniel. Some burned with envy. They watched as he rose, and they plotted to destroy him. They couldn't find fault in his work. They couldn't find scandal in his life. So they targeted the one thing they knew he'd never give up, his faith. They went to King Darius with a trap wrapped in flattery. "O king, make a law. Let no one pray to any god or man except you for 30 days. And Darius, blinded by pride, signed it. The law of the Medes and Persians could not be changed. They smiled because they knew Daniel would still pray. And just as they predicted, Daniel opened his windows, knelt toward Jerusalem, and prayed. He didn't hide. He didn't whisper. He prayed like he always had. Because Daniel feared God more than man. Because faith doesn't pause when the world turns against you. Because loyalty to heaven is greater than comfort on earth. And they found him, caught him, dragged him before the king. And the law demanded death. King Darius was crushed. He loved Daniel. He respected him. But his own law bound his hands. He tried all day to save him. Looked for loopholes. Searched for mercy. But there was none. And as the sun set, the king gave the order. They took Daniel, led him through the palace, down stone steps, into darkness, to the pit. The den opened, and the roar shook the ground. Lions starved and savage, muscles rippling, teeth gleaming, and they lowered Daniel down. No weapons, no armor, just faith, just prayer. The stone rolled over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his ring, and walked away in sorrow. That night, he couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He paced, he wept, he prayed. But Daniel? Daniel was in the presence of angels. It was a night like no other. The beasts circled, but did not bite. They stared, but did not strike. Because the God of Daniel had sent his angel. My God has shut the lions' mouths. Peace in the pit, glory in the grave. Because heaven steps into darkness when faith stands firm. Daniel rested, while lions laid down in the presence of God's servant. At dawn, the king ran, raced to the den, cried out, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God saved you? And from the pit, a voice answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and the stone was rolled away. And Daniel was lifted alive, untouched, not a scratch, not a wound, because no weapon formed against him could prosper. Then the king made a decree. All people must fear the God of Daniel, for he is the living God. He rescues and saves. And Daniel prospered, because he chose prayer over fear, because he trusted, even in the lion's den. Friend, your faith may lead you into the pit, but God will meet you there. The roar may be loud, the threat may be real, but when you stand for God, he stands for you. This is the legacy of Daniel, a man of courage, a man of prayer, a man whose God shut the mouths of lions.